Hey, what's going on, everybody out there? This is Jakejames Lugo. Welcome to the channel, and this is a brand new episode of A Definitive Discussion. Hope you guys have been enjoying all the different episodes I've been uploading to the channel lately. Hope you guys have been enjoying all the guests. But I got a brand new guest with me, a fun one. We got Tony Wilson, video producer over at GameSpot. What's going on, Tony? How you been, dude?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Of course, man. Well, you're always welcome. We talk a lot on Twitter, but this is the first time we're actually talking on a podcast-like format, which should be fun.
This is probably the first time we've heard each other's voice.
So there you go. It's a first for
or
everybody.
at least over Skype or anything like that.
Yeah, right? So celebration. Here we go. So
Yeah.
the fun topic we're going to dive into today on this definitive discussion is that we're going to talk about covering gaming events, okay? Because you have experience with that. You've talked about it. I think you told me recently you went to the Nintendo Switch event, correct?
Yes, I was at the Nintendo Switch event.
So that's pretty cool. So to kind of start things off, because I also want to talk about the Switch event as well. Again, from your own perspective while you were out there, tell me a little bit about what's it like for you now that you're over at GameSpot, covering gaming events, whether it's E3, whether it's PAX, or whichever events that you've been to thus far in your career. You know, what's that like for you? Fun, not fun, work intensive, not work intensive? What's it like?
I think covering events are what it's all about. You know, we cover games because we love them, and the biggest announcements, obviously, you get from things like E3 and some of the standalone events like the Switch thing. And I think it's just a chance. Again, it's a chance to get hands on with some of those things you love too. So absolutely love them. It's PAX East specifically is like a highlight of my year. The Nintendo Switch event was a lot of fun. E3s are a marathon, but they are, you feel good coming out the other side of it. But yeah, I love them. I love covering events. It's absolutely a highlight of the job for sure.
Me too. I could attest to all of that, and I agree with all of that. It's just every time, like when I went to my first E3, it was like, again, besides being there, which was like, oh my God, this is actually happening. But like when you're in the middle of stuff and things are hectic, you're going from place to place, or you're playing all these games, or you're seeing all these different people that maybe you've read their stuff or you watch their stuff. It could be almost, jaw dropping to some extent, but it could also be super fun despite the workload. Like you mentioned PAX East. I love going to PAX East. I've gone a couple times now, and it's one of those community driven events where it's not as intensive as like an E3 or a Comic-Con and such, but you're seeing a lot of people there, especially a lot of people that probably aren't part of games media, aren't part of the industry, that are all there and enjoying the same things that what you're enjoying.
That's the wonderful thing about PAX. It's this hybrid between the media and just the everyman who just likes to play games. You go there and you see all types of people who enjoy gaming as a hobby, and you go there and you see all types of people who cover hobby, cover games for their day job. So it's just PAX specifically is just this wonderful, wonderful marriage of the press and the community. We can probably dive more into it later, but PAX East for me, the one coming up in a couple weeks, that's going to be my seventh one, seventh PAX East. And I owe like my career to going to PAX East and into some of the people that I've been able to meet because of that. Only done one E3 myself. I don't know how many you've done, but I only just did my first with GameSpot
that's awesome.
Last summer.
That must have been surreal for you. Like now, I'm going on my fourth now this June. And for PAX, you've gone to many more PAXs than me. I think I'm going on my fourth one, I think, as well, or my third. I have to double check that. But you've gone to significantly more PAXs than me.
Yeah, I've done a lot of East. I've never done Prime, never done South.
Me neither, yeah.
But PAX East I've done, I think, everyone but the very first year. I think the very first year was maybe 2010 or something like that. Yeah. So I did everyone but the first PAX East.
So to kind of springboard off of that and talk a little bit about your first E3 and such, one thing I will say is that, like, granted, PAXs and you could even throw Comic-Cons in there, those are very community-driven events, and they're very big in their own right, especially San Diego Comic-Con. That's like Mecca for a lot of people. But for us, obviously, being in gaming, E3 is our Super Bowl and stuff. And while it's not so open, or at least, back then, it wasn't as open as it is now for a variety of different reasons, it's still just as, like, wondrous in some form or fashion, as far as the job is concerned. Because, like, granted, when we went there, and I'm pretty sure you saw this when you went on your first, that, like, you're playing games games that won't be out for like months, if not a year or so on end. And you're playing games that are like either just getting shown for the first time, or you're seeing games being shown for the first time as world exclusives. And it's like, wow, like there's a lot of stuff happening here and stuff. But what's it like for you when you went out there covering the event? Because I probably talked about it a couple times in various different videos and such. But again, to hear somebody else talk about like their first E3, it's like every time you talk to somebody and you ask them about it, it's always a different but similar like answer of excitement and stuff. Yeah,
so it's kind of a different thing for me, just because on the video side, and specifically with GameSpot, like we take the whole team out and we have basically a war room. So for a lot of us on the video side, we actually don't really ever leave that room, just because there's so much coming in and so much we're editing and so much stuff we're publishing that, like, you know, sometimes there are some people who just go out to appointments, and then there are some people who are just on the post-production process, just because we're handling so much stuff. And, you know, we have 2 stages. One of them is down in the actual hall. One of them is actually in that room.
I remember that.
You know, when you see us talking before and after the press conferences, that stage is like we are all on the other side of that dividing wall, basically. So we have this entire workforce just packed into that room. Yeah. And so as far as going out and seeing the show floor from a video side of things, I only really got to go to the floor like once or twice, just because the schedule is so packed in that way. I was able to go out, fortunately, during one of the times I was like able to, that I was allotted to do that. I was able to get hands-on with Zelda, which was great.
Nice.
It was just it was before the show floor itself had actually opened up, but because we have a stage, we're considered exhibitors, so we can go in and out earlier if we need to, because cool. Oftentimes we do need to for you know, stage purposes, we do need to go in earlier. So luckily, I was able to go in before like people were in there and just say, hey, I've only got half an hour before I have to, you know, before we all have to start working this day. Is there any way I could just get in there and play the game for a little bit? And the Nintendo rep was kind enough to let me do that. So that was actually the only thing I ended up playing at last E3. But from an editing side, from a video side, I couldn't even tell you how many trailers, how many breakouts from our live shows, how many previews, how many interviews, how many impressions, all this stuff that I went through, or that we all went through, because we all just have such a full plate and we're all just, you know, bearing down full steam, editing for, you know, 10, 11 hours a day.
Yeah, like it gets pretty crazy at E3 for just about everybody. Again, whether you're on the video side, whether you're on the reporting side, it's our Super Bowl for our industry. Mainly because there's so many things happening at the same time that you can't be everywhere at the same time. Like it's
difficult
insane
to explain it to people who don't. It's difficult sometimes to even explain it to people who do play games, unless you really follow games coverage or have even given it a try yourself. It's really hard to explain. I was out with some girl the other night, and we were talking about she works for a magazine, and I was trying to explain, like, so E3 is like, imagine if you had like enough content to fill like 2 months worth of issues
in 3 days,
but you got it all in like 3 days. Yeah,
it's totally true.
That's kind of the best way I could explain it to her. And that's the best way I could try to explain it to anybody who hasn't, you know, done an event themselves.
Yeah, it's just like, again, because you have so many trailers you got to deal with. There's so many things, like, you know, happening with the people that are there. Like, because again, I remember the last couple times I've gone and I've seen the GameSpot stage, which, you know, is big when you walk into that. I believe it's the West Hall, right? Or is it the South Hall? I always get it confused at the time.
I don't even know.
It's where all the first parties at. It's where the first party.
Yeah, I think it's West Hall.
Yeah, the West Hall where all the first parties are at. So that's like Microsoft, Nintendo, Sony, and stuff. Where they have their big booths. It's a big booth that the GameSpot stage is at. And I always remember, like, every time I walk by there, there's always somebody new that's like, again, gets huge amounts of attention that's over there. That's like talking about their games or talking about what their company's bringing over the next year and stuff. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun having that stage. We bring on for the one in the West Hall, that's our co-op stage. So we bring on like a lot of that's more of the personality and the YouTuber kind of stage, right? So we bring on like Critical Role, Game Theory, those sorts of people, and then our I don't remember if we still call it main stage, but our other stage, the one that's actually up in our war room, that one is more often. That's like, okay, we have just this endless cycle of devs coming in and out to talk about games.
Crazy. Now, tell me a little bit about the war room, because I know a little bit about, like, what a war room is like. I've never been in one myself yet. Hopefully one day down the line. But I've heard stories of people that are, working for whichever website, and they talk about the experience about being there. Again, you're there, you're working on content most of the day and stuff. Some people, from what I've been told, don't leave there till like mad late at night sometimes. Again, trying to get all that stuff out, or trying to make sure everything's working in the midst of like the chaos that is E3. What's it like, at least for you, while you're out there for GameSpot, being part of that experience?
So basically the war room, it's easiest to answer if you just kind of picture like a press room. Right, so everybody's in there to write or to edit or do whatever they're there at the show to do, except instead of this collective room of the press, it's all these people who actually work for the same outlet. So specifically, the GameSpot War Room, what you'll walk into is what would normally be just kind of this giant empty conference hall that now we have lined with a couple tables. One corner is one of our live stages. The other one's actually down on the show floor, as we said. But one's kind of in the corner, and it's actually facing toward the corner. You don't want it facing out toward everybody for a couple of reasons. So you have that and everything that comes with the live stage. So you have your switchers, you have your audio mixers, your cameras, and obviously all the people to actually run that, make that happen.
Cool.
So that's all kind of in one corner. You've got your table of all the editors. You've got your table of all the video people. You've got your table of the like art and promotion, Facebook, Twitter, those people as well. And then depending on the size of your staff, sometimes you also have like one, and depending on who's there, for your company, sometimes you also have a spare for other people to come in and out. So we have other people who are higher up at CBS that are often there.
Yeah.
And because we also are owned by CBS also owns Giant Bomb and CNET. Sometimes those people will come through as well. So yeah, it's this giant collective room of people who all do work for the same force, basically. All just
So let me ask you this then. Like, what's the general feeling in there, when you go into something like that? Like, is everybody all business? Is it like super serious? Or is there a level of excitement? Or at least, you're out there, you guys are there to do a job, obviously. But like, is it like super serious, like, throughout the entirety of the weekend, or at least the time that you're in that war room?
It's definitely a hustle. It's definitely like nose to the grindstone, but that's not to say there aren't, moments where you can take a breather. From the video side of things, we capture and break out things from the press conferences. And so, it only takes, let's say there's a new trailer for Death Stranding. It only takes one person to grab that specific trailer and post it, right? The whole team doesn't need to jump on that one. So we kind of take turns in that way so that no one person is going crazy. And certainly, when we're watching the press conferences, we're all sitting together. So we're cracking jokes, or we're clapping, or we're standing up for anything particular that we like, but it's definitely a hustle. If you can't cut it, it'll be clear.
It'll like, the title just come over you, because it's an intensive amount of work, obviously. Like, again, being someone that, since I've been there, I could definitely say, like, either you're running around or you're going someplace. Like, you're always doing something at E3. Like, you have to be doing something at E3 because, like, again, there's so much stuff happening at the same time that if you're not, you're missing out on stuff that should be going out there.
Yeah, and you're doing it from 8:30 in the morning to like 8:30 at night,
nonstop. Like, you're getting one of the rules I always say with like friends of mine that end up going there is that you get no sleep during E3, or you get very little sleep during E3.
You don't get good sleep for sure,
and you drink a lot of coffee in most cases because it's so chaotic with what's happening at the time. But here's a fun question, like, compared to that, okay, which is intensive in its own right, compare that to your experience going to something like a PAX or going to something else, any other event like that, that might not be as intense and stuff. Which do you feel like is either the most productive or the most fun for you?
Well, I mean, PAX, I would say, is more fun than E3. from just comparing some of the stuff I've done, just because just PAX has more of a like let's have fun, play some games, and talk about nature, as opposed to E3, which is like you have to sort of go down this checklist of let's make sure we hit everything.
Yeah.
So PAX is definitely more relaxed. That being said, PAX itself is still definitely a hustle. But it's been said by many people, and I agree, that PAX is a sprint, E3 is a marathon, right? So you're still doing equivalent work, but one of them is over a weekend versus a week, PAX also has the luxury is probably not the right word, but PAX also has the distinction of having panels. So panels are also a great way from the press side of things to sort of break things up. Mm-hmm. And panels are also a wonderful thing for community to check out. I am basically at GameSpot because of a panel, and there are many people who've also gotten inspired as I did thanks to other panels.
Get that one-on-one time most of the time, because I've been to a couple panels during the PAXs I've gone to, and they're very intimate. Mm-hmm. They're very kind of like, again, you have those opportunities to ask questions, or even just to hear like some of the people that you follow talk a little bit more often than probably what you get.
To just hear them stuff. As opposed to reading their carefully edited articles or watching their carefully edited videos.
Like when you first started, and going into stuff when you eventually went to GameSpot and stuff, like what did you like cherish like those types of experiences like more often, or like did you actively seek those types of things out before actually everything started moving full speed ahead?
Oh, absolutely. I probably asked an embarrassing level of questions to people after panels. I was probably a bit of a nuisance with as many questions as I was asking, but it was stuff I wanted to know about, and it was an industry I wanted to get into. So you ask questions of those people. Yeah, they're great.
So let me ask you this then, for the person that doesn't know, someone who's not like me, again, who isn't in the industry, who's probably on the outside looking in and stuff, do you think for them, just putting them kind of like diving in the fire, like either going to a PAX or going to any other events, because obviously they can't really go to E3 because it's kind of closed to the public in some fashion, but like going to some of those events like that, even if they're not there just to do work and stuff, do you think that's like puts them well on their way to like actually being part of like that scene, being part of like that whole industry, or part of the media, as far as like getting a taste of like what's that like?
Oh, for sure. And I think if you haven't been to any sort of event like that, whether it's PAX or an RTX or a MagFest or something, and you are part of the gaming culture, you should do that. Save up some money and give it a shot. If it's an experience that you regret, then I would love to know what happened. Because to me it's like a must do kind of thing. If you're sort of like, if you're a film guy, at some point you want to go to a Sundance or a Toronto International Film Festival or something, you want to go to these things. And so I'd say definitely, like, if you are part of the gaming culture, like, go check it out. It's an awesome experience. And it's hard to say. Well, in some ways it does give you a taste of what the press side can be like if you go to panels, and the panels are oftentimes, most of the time, from people on the press side of things. You have some from developers as well, but a lot of them are people from GameSpot, IGN, YouTubers, the people whose work you're reading and watching. And so it can be great, as you said, to just sit down and hear them talk, just to kind of hear them pick their own brain for a bit, so you can kind of, get to know them a bit more, kind of learn where they came from and, some of their motivations in these things.
And just have fun with it like that. Like, I would even take it one step further. Like when I started out, I went to a lot smaller events. I went to local conventions like that. And some of them were involved with gaming or outside of gaming and stuff. But that's how I got exposed to that type of culture. That's how I got exposed to that type of hustle. Like, for me, I would recommend to anybody else, start off small and then go big like that. Don't just dive into like a crazy event like that, because, you're going to get varying different experiences depending on what you want to do. I mean,
definitely. I mean, if you
say that.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, if you are going to PAX because you want to do this sort of thing, then then that's definitely that's different from just going just to go. I've only been to PAX for that reason, for kind of furthering what I wanted to do.
Same.
And in fact, I've only ever been to PAX as press, whether that was, in the first couple of years, it was just for, small site that I was writing for at the time, or random, freelance gig that I got at the time,
Yeah.
But I'd say it's a good thing to go and get a taste. It's not going to be 100% accurate to what it's like on the press side of things, because you might not necessarily get to set the appointments you want to set and stuff like that. But as far as getting used to that hustle, doing some networking, which is very important,
hugely important.
it's a must. It's a must do, is go to a conference like that. It's not, when I say networking, I don't just mean nepotism or cronyism or anything like that. Because there's the phrase of, it's not what you know, but who you know.
Yeah.
But in my experience, that's only partially true. It's important to meet these people and to know their faces and for them to learn your face. But it's not like just knowing the person's going to get you anywhere.
You don't want to be that guy.
Exactly.
Guy.
Exactly. But if you're there and you're doing some reporting or you're doing some of your own video work, that can leave an impression on people. So it's important to kind of embody your resume sort of and go to one of these things.
I agree. And again, from personal experience and stuff, I think that not only can you leave an impression on them, but everything else could leave an impression on you. Like,
absolutely.
My very first industry event that I ever went to, like, as media, was a PAX East. And that, for me, the reason why that was so special at the time, not just because it was my first, but because of like some of the people that I ran into that I never thought I would at that instance, and it was just by chance, just randomly. Like, that was the first time I met Jeff Keighley, and it was like over something really stupid and silly, but it's like those little moments that, like, again, you remember little things like that. I remember in my case with him, it was about, like, we were poking fun at some of my friends that I went to the event with because their business cards were really, like, flimsy, like they looked like paper and stuff. So we were that's how we kind of, like, got connected and broke the ice. We were goofing on my friends about our business cards, and it was just fun to be around that experience. But at the same time, it's like, again, you're putting yourself out there, in the meantime of, like, dealing with all this other stuff, but you're having fun at the same time. And I think stuff like that is really cool because it makes you want to go back and makes you want to do it again and again and again.
Exactly.
So let me ask you this then, besides the big events like E3, PAX, whatever else, you obviously also have been to other smaller events, or at least events that aren't on, like, that grand scale and such. You mentioned the Nintendo Switch event, which we're going to get into in just a bit, but I want to talk about this idea of, like, going to, like, publisher events, developer events, stuff like, for example, like maybe even a review event when you go, or a preview event more likely, because not too long ago in my experience, I went to go check out, For Honor from Ubisoft. Everybody went out to San Francisco to go check out the game for the first time. Little events like that where there's not as many people, but it's a bunch of media people just going there, checking out the game, producing content for, like, the weekend or something like that. Have you gone to some of those things like that? And how would you compare that experience to, like, something that's a bigger, chaotic type of, like, event that you were to attend?
So some of that actually does depend on the specific event. So, like, some of them are super easy, from my perspective at least. The PS4 Pro event, for example.
That was the one in New York, right?
Correct. I don't know if they did separate ones internationally or not, but so they got up there, they revealed the Pro, and there were a few of them that we could go play, but nothing was really available for capture. We didn't have any interviews that we were trying to get. So from my perspective as the video guy who was there, I really didn't end up doing much. I think I shot a gallery because they had, some of the Pro stuff in a display case, but from my point of view, I didn't end up doing a whole lot. Whereas something like the Nintendo Switch event, also in New York, and that one actually was international. We had our team here, we had people in London, and we had people in Sydney who all went to see the Switch. And our goal was to play everything that was available, talk about it, record as much as we could. So that one was actually very busy. Just for my end alone, I ended up capturing a bunch of Zelda stuff. Myself and Peter Brown, we shot 2 different impressions videos of stuff we saw. We shot a very long and deep interview with Reggie, actually. So from my side, that one was actually quite busy. So it does depend on the specific event as far as how it stacks up to other things. And then sometimes, you mentioned preview review events. I've gone to some movie screenings for GameSpot because they do those here in the city. So I've done a few of those, and those are kind of just those are just sit down, watch the movie, and leave. And write about it, write whatever it is you're going to write about it. Which is actually a little surreal experience because you're used to sitting down and being bombarded with trailers and ads first.
And video editing as opposed to like words.
Yeah. So it's
so let me ask you this, like when you're there doing that stuff, like as you're capturing and stuff, is that really you playing most of the time, or is like you get the chance to actually play those games, or do you guys like take turns and stuff, or is it usually you looking at a person, or again having a subject while you capture the footage?
Mm-hmm. So it depends on the game, and it depends on sort of the rules of the event. So for example, at the Switch event, they had 2 separate demo stations for Breath of the Wild. It was the same demo they were running at E3, but it was now running on a Switch. So our colleagues in London, their event was first, so they had already captured that. However, the second demo they hadn't captured, but that one was a developer-guided demo, so that was not my hands-on. That was them playing and me capturing and breaking out the important stuff from that. So it does depend sometimes on the rules. Then sometimes it does also depend on the game. So, for example, Comic-Con last year, New York Comic-Con, I ended up getting a lot more game footage than I planned on overall, just because there was more there that I was able to sort of talk my way into getting.
Nice.
But one of the things that was there was Tekken 7.
Yep, I remember that.
Yeah, and I am terrible at fighting games. So I just said, hey, you guys have all these demo stations. For the sake of, keeping the line moving, can I just plug in and whoever's playing is just playing and that's what we're recording?
Smart move.
Yeah, and fortunately, the people working, the Bandai Namco, there it is. It's one of those. That's weird syllables. Bandai Namco people over there were kind enough to actually let me plug into the main stage where there were a couple pro players.
Nice.
So we did end up getting some nice footage out of that. So it depends. Sometimes I choose not to play because I know it's going to look bad. Or sometimes it's a combination of both. Sometimes I'll play for my own experience, and so I can, talk about the game later. But for sake of having it look good on YouTube, depending on the game, I'll say, hey, you made this game. You're going to play it better than me. Do you want to fight this boss or do whatever just so, we make it look good? So it's not just me. So it's not just me dying 10 times in a row. Because there's definitely been a couple things like that. Or there are a couple, sort of rhythm games that it takes a while to get used to. So I just, hey, do you want to play this song and maybe crank up the difficulty? Because, that'll look real cool.
You ever gotten comments or something on YouTube? It's like, hey, he's not hitting all the notes. Doesn't look like he's really winning over here. You ever got something like that?
Oh, definitely. And when I freelanced for Games Radar, I did a couple Dark Souls boss guides. And I remember there was one in particular that a bunch of people were giving me crap for because I fought it with people and
Those
not
are
alone.
Brutal, though. Those are brutal, though.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was on New Game Triple Plus, so I didn't feel any shame in calling in help when I did the video. But then sometimes there's some stuff where it's like, man, I nailed that. I played that game really well, and it's gonna look good. So it all depends. But that's part of what being a producer is about. That's why I'm not just an editor. I'm not just handed footage. I'm going out and getting the footage, and you have to decide, often, okay, what is going to make for a better video? Is it going to be me stumbling around in this tutorial for 20 minutes? Or do I just want to hand it to the dev, and have him play and actually show it off the way he wants it shown off? And then I'll play later for my own impressions,
Yeah. Which one does it usually end up being, though? Is it usually most of the time just them playing, so as you get the video so it looks good? Or, again, is it more you on the other end?
I mean, you kind of want both. You kind of just want a 50-50. When you can. Sometimes there are issues and you can't get both. But it's good to have both. I mean, more options when you're editing footage It's always better.
Good point. True. So, speaking on general terms of like covering game events and stuff, because obviously everybody has a story or two, maybe 3 or 4, whenever they go to any event that's out there, whether it's E3, whether it's Comic-Con, PAX, wherever else. Can you tell us like any funny story, like during any event that you've ever been to that just stuck out to you, whether it's funny, memorable, whatever the case may be?
Well, they all blur together.
That's how you know they're good.
Everything blurs together. Boy, it's always weird trying to recall stories like that sometimes, because it's often like something will just trigger in your brain and then you'll remember a story, as opposed to trying to like dig back and find one. Mm-hmm. I mean, one thing that was certainly fun was I was at the Giant Bomb panel at PAX East the first year that they did their whole PAX East Rumble kind of thing.
Oh yeah, PAX Mania or PAX East Rumble. Yeah, I remember that.
Yes. And now it's expected that a lot of the panels are going to build up hype for the PAX Mania because it's one of the last things that happens. But this was the first year they were doing it, and so nobody knew that Giant Bomb was basically going to do a bunch of stunts on stage that night. And so the second we saw, I think it was Jeff break a bottle over like Dave Lang's head.
Wow. Yeah, I remember that.
You knew something was going down. And then, they had this whole thing, coordinated, worked out. So that was really cool. From a humorous side, from like a really memorable personal side, I saw a panel a couple of years after that had some GameSpot people as well as some Giant Bomb people specifically talking about video. And as someone who was freelancing at the time, but was studying video in college and wanted to do that, I went to that panel, obviously.
Yeah,
and
makes sense.
Afterwards, it was actually Mary Kish and Rob Handlery of GameSpot. Mary actually works for Twitch now, but the two of them were on that panel. I saw them in the press room a little later. I just walked up, said, "Hey, I just want to tell you that was a great panel, whatever." Made some small talk, just kind of asked them, "Hey, you guys looking for any freelance work? Do you use freelance, video people, whatever?" And they do use them at E3. And, they said, yeah, here's some people you can contact. Here's some things to send, whatever.
Nice.
And so because of that, I was pointed toward GameSpot. And I actually, nothing actually came of that. I really probably wasn't at the skill level that they needed anyway at that time. But because of that, part of, GameSpot was now on my radar of this is a place I need to pay more attention to as far as what they're doing and career openings and that sort of thing. And obviously GameSpot's one of the bigger ones, so it's not like I wasn't aware of GameSpot before, but I wasn't focused on it as much as I was then. And, fortunately it worked out, and I did end up, eventually becoming a part of GameSpot, but it was because of that conversation and being turned on to the website in the first place.
Yeah, that I could totally relate to that. Again, I feel like, whenever somebody gets into, again, whether it's working for a bigger website or just any website that's involved in games media or the games industry like that, there's always a story that it plays out similarly. Like in my case, I started freelancing for IGN about, I want to say almost 2 years ago now. I'm going on my second year being a freelancer for them. And it started off from just answering a call on Podcast Beyond. Like for me, at the time, it was Jared Petty who put out a call for anybody who wants to work on the wikis, who wants to help write guides and stuff. And I was like, you know what? Why don't I just do it just to see what happens with her? And sure enough, after sending an email saying, hey, I would love to help stuff, immediately, I got a response back, and then it just progressed from there and stuff. It always comes from that one little initiative where it's going to an event or just going someplace or just sending an email. You're better off doing something and getting a no than not doing it at all. That
exactly.
That's a universal
you got to
thing.
be proactive about it.
Exactly.
If you want to do something, just start doing it. Do it and make people notice it and get people to pay for it. And it's actually funny that you bring up the wikis and stuff, because a good friend of mine, Casey DeFreitas, who now works for IGN.
I just worked with her. Yes.
Yeah. Casey's great. So I met Casey at a few PAXs back. Just because we had a shared history of, she interned at Future US, which used to publish the Best Buys at Gamer magazine. Nice. I was going to intern the following summer at Games Radar. She was a total stranger at the time, but we happened to meet for I couldn't even tell you why at PAX.
randomly.
kept in contact because we both had similar goals. We were both at similar, places in our career.
Cool.
Kept in contact, and like became like friends. Like we've hung out whenever we're in the same city for whatever. And yeah, like I got to see her go through that exact progression you're talking about, doing stuff on the wikis, kind of becoming the go-to Pokemon person for that stuff, and now hired full time to work there.
She just got which is awesome. That's the best type of ending, like especially after all that time working or something like that.
Yeah.
When you finally get that call, it's gotta be a great feeling. And stuff.
Yeah, like knowing her and watching her rise over those couple of years was an awesome thing to watch.
And I'm pretty sure it was the same thing for you as well. Like once it got to that point when you finally got that call, it's like, oh, like now this is awesome. Like now this is finally happening.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely I hadn't done anything for GameSpot before I actually interviewed. I did have, the usual portfolio and the resume and the reel, the things that you have to have and you have to be doing.
You got to have something
already. But GameSpot was actually just a good cover letter, good resume kind of deal. Nice. And I was lucky enough that they wanted to talk to me. But moral of the story, as we both said, you just got to do it.
Yeah.
You just got to do it and put it out there for people to pay attention to.
Yeah, make like Nike and just do it.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to hear no. They often say that's the worst thing you can hear. Probably the worst. There is one worse thing, and that's no, and also we don't think you're very good at it. Which I got once or twice.
Really? Was it bad?
But here's the thing, they were right.
True.
And because of that, because it was specifically the editorial side, I was able to focus on the video more because that's what I want to do. And even though I had freelanced, I'm way better with video than I ever was or will be writing.
Yeah.
And so that, steered me away from it more toward the video. And so it was a net positive. So don't be, you can't be afraid of being told no or being told kind of a meaner no. And you can't be afraid of having your stuff criticized. It'll only make it better. Even the stuff that seems to be not necessarily constructive, find a way to make that better.
Adapt and conquer. Like, you know what I think we could add on to that too? Don't be afraid of the reaction to what you do. And I could say that from personal experience because I did my first IGN review about, I want to say about a year ago now at this time, because it was in February, like the beginning of February where I did it for Ultimate Ninja Storm 4. And
I was just about to ask, I'm sure you remember what the first game was.
Oh yeah. It's just like, but my point was like the reaction, to it, obviously, because, the outlet and stuff, very visceral, very, though it was going to be what it was going to be and stuff. But, even despite that, I still wanted to do it because obviously I wanted to write, the review for them. But also I wanted to do something that was awesome that a lot of people are going to get something out of it. And I feel like you can't really get to have that feeling, or you can't really accomplish things like that if you get so caught up on what the reaction's going to be from people rather than, just moving past what the reaction is. Like, for example, like in your case, I'm pretty sure like you weren't going to be too worried about like, oh, if I put this video out on like the GameSpot YouTube or something, the comments that they're going to be on there or the like to dislike ratio and stuff. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure you're never going to get caught up on stuff like that.
Yeah. Sometimes the reaction is different from what you'd expect. Sometimes things get more heat than you'd expect.
Yeah.
Sometimes things get a lot more views than you expect. Sometimes they get a lot less. But yeah, you have to embrace it. One of the first comments I remember seeing on anything I did, and it stuck with me for what to me is a positive reason, was I don't remember the name of the commenter. I don't remember what the subject of the video was. All I remember is they were unhappy. They yelled a couple things, and then they finished with "F you, Tony from GameSpot." And I remember seeing that, and the only thing that stuck out to me from that entire comment was that he called me Tony from GameSpot. Hey. And I was like, I did it.
Yeah, you did it.
Like, I'm okay. Like, I'm okay with the rest of the rant because that's how I was referred to.
Now you are Tony from GameSpot. You are Tony from GameSpot. You're
and then I'm completely okay with it. So you have to be ready for that, and you have to be willing to see it and to hear it because you will get a lot of criticism in this sort of job.
No.
And you'll get it with any sort of writing job, whether it's games, whether it's movies, politics, anything. People have opinions and they will voice them.
Very true. Now, to kind of relate all this back to like originally what we were talking about with events and stuff, like did you ever think about stuff like that when you would come face to face with some of these individuals? Again, either people that you've watched at like many different outlets when you were freelancing and stuff, or just people that you were just running into that were, again, comrades in the same industry, comrades in the same pastime or the hobby or the work and stuff. Because when I was younger, when I went to my first E3, that's what I thought about originally going there. Like, because you always get like those pre-event jitters. I think everybody goes through them at some point. But like, did you ever think about that? Like maybe the reaction, like, oh, what are these people gonna, think of me as I go out here? Because being a greenhorn, being someone that's new to all this, I mean, it could at first be intimidating.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It was my very first PAX that I went to. I was, I think, not quite 17. So like I was a kid.
Still in high school.
Yeah. I was. I guess that'd make me like a junior, something like that. I don't know.
Because senior is 18, I think.
Yeah, somewhere around there. So, I remember going, and I would meet people. They would ask like, what I was covering, who I was there for, whatever. And the reaction I got from just about everybody was like, "Oh, and you're so young," which is like kind of frustrating to hear because you're like, I mean, sure, but I'm also here doing like a lot of work, and I wish you would like pay attention to that too.
Yeah, right.
So that was kind of the initial thing I was met with. But what I had to like spin to a positive was like, oh no, if I was doing that much when I was 16, then like imagine what I can do in another couple years. So again, like trying to spin things into a positive. And certainly there were tons of people, and I don't want to name any names. There are tons of people who I met with and had fantastic conversations. There are some who I met with and didn't really have too much to say back and forth because that's fine. You're not going to hit it off with everybody.
You're never going to click with everybody, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there are some people that I have no desire to really talk to again.
There's always that one guy.
Yeah,
that one person.
And I don't want to name any specific names for any of those. But that's how it's going to be.
It's a wide range of experiences.
Yeah, and you won't know unless you just go and talk to people and try to make those connections, try to do that networking.
I think once you get out there, once you get over those little small hurdles and you just do it, or as you do it more often, it becomes less of a worry or less of a priority for you because you're so focused on the work and so focused on like your output at one point that again it just becomes second nature every time that you go. I think. Would you say it's the same?
Yeah, I would say so. When you're definitely focused in on what you're there to do, that stuff fades away. And in fact, engaging in that stuff can sometimes pull you right out of it. Sometimes you'll be in the middle of something and someone may recognize you, which, I mean, I don't mean this in any sort of bragging way. It's happened to me maybe 2-3 times.
Nice.
Maybe. So I do not mean that as a brag in any way, but that stuff will actually pull you out of it sometimes and, remind you that, oh, no, right. I'm here to do a job, but also I'm a part of this bigger thing.
Definitely. Something that brings up a good point. I think this is a good way to wrap everything up. Every time I go to like an event, especially like E3, because I've noticed it the last couple of years I've gone, where there's these after party events. It happens at PAX,
I love
at E3.
them.
They're fun. Let's get it right out the way. They're fun as hell. They're amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always those couple instances of stuff where it's like you know that you want to go and you know that you feel like you'll be missing out something, but you don't, or that you can't for whatever reason. Whether it's that you have to get
I couldn't go for the first few PAXs because I wasn't old enough.
That's a valid reason, but
yeah.
like you know what I mean. Like for example, like I'm pretty sure your first E3 and stuff, there was obviously a lot of E3 parties that were going on within the, wherever they were going on, down in LA and stuff. But the point is, it's like, there's always those times that I've experienced myself, and I'm pretty sure other people have in this industry, where it's like, there's things going on and there's like a bunch of your colleagues and stuff that are all hanging out and such, but you got to get work done and you just can't be a part of that, whether it's that you really want to or whether you really don't. Like, have you ever had that, or at least you've come to that, like, crossroads?
Sometimes, yeah. Because I am very much of the mentality of why push anything to tomorrow if I can get it done today.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is sometimes to my detriment. But yeah, there were definitely once or twice where it was like, do I go down to do this, or do I keep working, or do I just go to sleep?
Yeah,
like
that's how it always works with me, is sleep.
Yeah, like I remember it was actually literally just this past PAX. A couple of us had gone to the Kind of Funny party. Because those guys are fantastic.
Oh yeah, you're talking about the Hitman one, right? The one that everybody was going nuts over.
I guess that was it. If that was the most recent one.
Yeah, it was the last PAX, so I remember that. That was cool.
Yeah, so those guys are great, and they've and Kind of Funny has done a few kind of co-op things with GameSpot. So we were there. We were there for a couple hours. We were all kind of off doing our own things, talking to our various, friends and comrades from the industry. Eventually I left, went back to the hotel, and I was like, all right, Tom, I'm just going to go to bed. I was, I got ready for bed, hopped into my PJs, whatever. I'm like halfway in bed, and then I get a text from another GameSpot person, Mike Mahardy, and he's like, hey, we're all downstairs at the bar. And so I was like, well, all right then. So I put my normal clothes back on, went downstairs to the bar for another hour or two.
So much for sleeping.
Yeah. So, yeah, sometimes you're making that choice.
Yeah, the one time I've ever had a choice like on that level that I really had to make a definitive choice in that matter was that I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was PSX. And I had gone to some sort of gathering where there was a bunch of Sony PlayStation people, and I had never met any PlayStation people whatsoever in person. I was like, you know what, I really want to go to this. But what happened was prior to it, I think with me and a friend of mine went to Portillo's, and I never had Portillo's out in the West. It was the first time I ever had it. I remember eating one of those giant hot dogs that you could get there for a couple bucks. I had that, and then as soon as we were on the way to where this PlayStation event was, I ended up starting to feel sick. Now, you ever been in one of those positions where it's there's something that's going to happen that's just going to ruin your night? That's it's done, yeah. It's over.
Oh, yeah.
This was one of those nights for me. And it was by the time we were over there, and I think I maybe spent maybe about an hour, 45 minutes, give or take. And there was a point I was like, you know what? My night's just done. My body is like, nope, you got to go. You got to go home and just get some sleep because you were finished for the night. And I was like, man, this is not cool and stuff. I'm missing out. And you always feel like you're missing out on stuff when you have to leave earlier where you can't go someplace. But eventually you get over it and stuff but that was the one time I've ever had to experience something like that.
Yeah. There was a similar thing actually, just this past E3, because GameSpot, we always do a wrap party. And it is always very welcome because by the end we're all just dead. So what do you do when you're dead tired? You go to a bar together.
Yeah.
But I remember I had to duck out of that one pretty early because I was flying home at 9 a.m.
Oh man, so, you got to go at that point.
Yeah. So when you got to get to LAX on a Friday morning, you need some time.
in LAX's defense, though, they got a good airport, though. I gotta give them that.
They do. It was a fine airport.
Still, straight up. That sounds like fun. Another cool, funny thing, though, at least from E3, from the GameSpot booth, you guys got the only spot in the entire convention that got chargers right next to the stage. I want to meet the person who came up with that idea because that is genius. Everybody goes over there to charge their phones.
I'm wondering whose idea that is, but you're right. It's good, and we have the seating there so y'all can sit down and watch. It's a lot of fun. I'm really proud of our stage.
It's real chill.
Yeah, we had that real cool Airheads mural too last time.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember that. That was awesome. Still, but either way, Tony, thank you for joining me on this, talking games, talking game events, talking about all this fun stuff.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, definitely. This is cool. Again, because like I said at the beginning of this, we never really talked before, and I think this is dope. I think this is fun. Where can everybody find you right now? Social media, everywhere.
All right, so I do work for GameSpot. So you can find a bunch of news videos that I do over there. I do the gameplay stuff. I do the appointments, the E3 stuff when I need to. I also host our new releases show every week.
Nice.
That posts every Sunday, so you can check that out. I'll tell you about some cool stuff that's coming out that week. Upcoming episodes. Got a bunch of really cool indies on Steam that I think people should check out. On Twitter, you can find me at ChainGunPope. Twitter is a free-for-all, so go ahead, follow me, at me, yell whatever. Please do. I love talking with whoever on there, good or bad.
Nice.
I do also do a lot for another website called LaserTime, lasertimepodcast.com. I do a lot behind the scenes there. But I also do my own kind of side project video series over there called Tea Time. It's kind of just whatever I feel like talking about. Usually it's a very not serious, very goofy thing that I just kind of do on my couch. But I have fun making that. I do those episodes bi-weekly.
Nice. Very, very cool. Yeah, definitely. There'll be links to all that stuff, guys, in the description box below, so you guys can go directly to that from this actual episode. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed our talk about games events, games media, games journalism, games video, all this different type of stuff. There's a lot to unpack in this episode if you haven't already gathered and such. But again, Tony, thank you. It was fun. It was awesome.
Thank you.
So definitely, guys, again, all the relevant links that we just mentioned before are in the description box below. Make sure that you guys leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment down below. Tell me who you guys want to see next on the show. Tell me what you guys want to see us talk about eventually. And we will talk to you again very, very soon. Peace out and stay epic, everybody.